Welcome to the What's Important Now broadcast. In America today, we are witnessing a cultural shift. This is the show devoted to the battle for the soul of our country. Join our host, Tom Sears, as he explains the issues of our day and join the fight to bring values and morality back. Let's join Tom now as he shares what's important now.
And welcome inside of What's Important Now. I'm Tom Sears. Before we move forward today, I want to lead with something solemn and heartfelt. The world has lost Charlie Kirk, victim of political violence, assassinated for his beliefs. He was a husband, a father, a Christian man whose faith guided every step of his work. To his wife, Erica, to his children, and to all of his family and friends, our prayers are with you. Ladies and gentlemen, political violence has no place in our society. Charlie did not just build a movement. He walked in faith. He often spoke about how his Christian principles shaped his convictions. How he stood for truth. He defended free speech. And he believed that God's principles are timeless. His leadership was not perfect, but his faith was genuine. And among his greatest accomplishments was inspiring young people to see their beliefs not as liabilities, but as foundations. Of course, he co-founded Turning Point USA in 2012 as a very young man. And tirelessly, he challenged young minds on college campuses all across America to wake up, to examine culture, to fight for what's right. And he wasn't afraid of controversy. He wasn't deterred by opposition. His voice echoed that good people, grounded in truth and faith, can make a difference. And though his life was cut short, his legacy reminds all of us that courage, conviction, and faith will never be silenced by darkness. And so today, we stand together in sorrow, but also in resolve. Good people will not be deterred. So, ladies and gentlemen, I encourage you to take a moment if you haven't already, and if you have, maybe another moment or two, to pause in prayer for his wife and his children and for all that loved him. Pray that God's comfort, God's peace, and God's strength would be with them now. And so we press on. Over the last several podcasts, we have asked some tough questions already in this series, Is America Dying? In part 1, we talked about lawlessness and moral collapse. And in part 2, we talked about the family being under fire. And those were things that Charlie also emphasized in his mission. And today, another point that he would most definitely cover is civic virtue. But I want to look at it from the perspective of what happens when we begin to trade our responsibilities for entitlements. Rome fell when bread and circuses replaced duty. And the question is America doing the same? And so with that, we dig in. So I think as we move forward here, something that has to be defined is what civic virtue actually means. So let's define it plainly here. Civic virtue, in my humble opinion, is the glue of free people. It's personal responsibility. It's keeping your word. It's serving your neighbor. It's telling the truth even when it costs you. And the events more recently involving Charlie Kirk, it proves that the ultimate price sometimes is paid for what's right. But it's more than that. It's keeping your word. It's serving your neighbor. It's working hard. It's showing up. And civic virtue is something that our founding fathers banked on. If you look back, John Adams actually warned that our Constitution was made for a moral and a religious people, and took it a step further. And he said that without virtue, freedom becomes ungovernable. It can't be sustained. And so in that, we take a look and we say, well, where are we? You know, you look at a timeline. You go all the way back from early America, and then you fast forward to today, and you begin to look at civic virtue and what it looks like through generations. And if you go back to the founding era, the early republic, you see that there were people obviously signed up for local militias. They were involved heavily in town meetings. Church was a very important part of their lives. They had civic associations, and those things were they used to be, at least back then, they were the backbone of daily life in the early years of our nation. And citizens did not only belong and benefit from the freedom, but they participated. And that is so important. In the 1830s, a gentleman from France, Alexis de Tocqueville, he comes in and he begins to examine America. And he actually is astounded at what he called the art of association. And he couldn't get over the voluntary clubs, you know, the things that people did voluntarily. And he couldn't get over how important the churches were in holding the communities together. And he wrote about that. He actually pointed to those things as the reason for America's success. And then fast forward another 30 years, really less than 30 years, because the Civil War didn't just begin in 1861. It was the events leading up to it. But if you look at the Civil War and Reconstruction time, obviously there was unimaginable sacrifice. Citizenship was actually defined by duty that cost. So many people lost their lives during the American Civil War, fighting for what they believed in. Right or wrong, fighting for what they believed in. Progressive era, 1890 to 1920. We begin to see a boom in civic clubs. We see mutual aid societies. We begin to see fraternal orders, structures of service and accountability during that time. And then we get to the World War II era. And if you look at things here on the home front, you see the sacrifices that were made during that time. Rationing, for instance, war bonds, scrap drives. Millions began to sacrifice their daily comfort for the common good of the nation. And listen, we're not having this podcast right now, having this discussion, had they not done those things. And then we jump ahead to the 1960s and through the 1970s. And if you were to ask me, my opinion, I would simply say that this is the time period that we can point to in American history and say, that's where it started to turn, at least predominantly, right? I think that we can look and say, yes, there were things that led up to this time period. I will not argue, nor will I deny that. But I would also say this is the decade or the decades where there was a major shift in this country. We had Vietnam. We had cultural upheaval. We had Watergate. Now, why was Watergate so important? Well, Watergate was so important because this is where we begin to see, and you could even point to the assassination of President Kennedy as well and kind of put it in the same category. That is where public trust began to drop off, literally going over a cliff. And I can tell you right now, as of today, public trust has never, since that time in American history, has never fully recovered. No one trusts the government anymore. In the late 50s and mid 60s, roughly 3/4 of Americans said they trusted Washington to do the right thing. Today, it's 22%. Roughly 2 out of 10 people say they trust the government. That's historically low, ladies and gentlemen. And this is according to Pew Research. Now, that slide began in the 60s. It only deepened in the 70s. And it hasn't topped 30% of faith in government since 2007. Trust in each other has eroded in this country. In 1972, 46% of Americans told those surveyors that most people can be trusted. 46% in 1972 said, yep, the guy beside me can be trusted. I trust this person. You've seen the news recently, the young lady from Ukraine who escaped Ukraine. She gets on a bus in America and she's murdered. And the thing that is astounding to me when we talk about trusting others, not only could she not trust the psychopathic murderer behind her, she couldn't trust the people around her. No one offered her help. She's dying. No one offered her help. Unbelievable. But in 1972, nearly half of Americans said, yep, they can be trusted. But if you look at statistics that were taken fast forward to 2018, that number had dropped already to 34%. And so what happens is when neighbors stop trusting neighbors, civic virtue begins to thin out because everyone retreats. What about the issue of patriotism? Well, it's sagged right alongside of everything else. According to Gallup, American pride is now hovering near record lows. The share who say they're extremely proud of America is in the low 40s. That's historic. And if you take the extremely or very proud measure, it dips to around 58% in 2025. It's such a sharp decline from earlier decades. It just continues to go down. It's trending south. What about civic knowledge? Our kids are our future citizens. Abraham Lincoln said, if you want to know what the government or what the country's going to look like tomorrow, go to the classrooms and look today. So what is it about civic knowledge? Well, our kids are our future citizens, and in 2022, according to the nation's report card, only 22% of 8th graders performed at or above proficient in civics. You cannot expect civic virtue without civic understanding. And what about service? Well, the shape of service is beginning to change. The new Census AmeriCorps data shows that 28.3% of Americans volunteered through an organization in 22-23. Now, that rebounded from the pandemic slump, but we're still trying to rebuild habits that once were very natural to communities. And then there's one more sobering marker of culture shift: military service. Pew Research is finding that it is very rare for individuals to get into the military. Rare in comparison to years past. In 1980, about 18% of U.S. adults were veterans. Jump ahead to 2022, 6%. Fewer families today have direct ties to uniformed service, and that distance begins to dull shared sacrifice. Think about the people that went into the military because they had a father or a grandfather or a mother who served in the military, and they felt that it was a part of their civic responsibility to follow their footsteps. What does all this mean? Well, it means that when trust falls and when pride falls, when civic literacy begins to slip, and when fewer people taste shared service, civic virtue is thinned out. And we drift from what can I contribute to what can I get? And that's the hinge that we're on. And I'm reminded of President Kennedy's inaugural address where he says, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." As we go out to break, this is a snippet of my daughter's new single out on all music platforms. It's called Free. Brianna Megan.
The crowd was shouting, "Crucify," but you kept walking. Was treated like a slave, you suffered. A prisoner, but you held your peace. I wonder if my face shined before you as you were hanging on that tree.
In a world filled with noise, Anchor Point Media Network is here to bring you truth, clarity, and hope. We're not just another media outlet. We are where faith and leadership meet media. Listen to What's Important Now with me, Tom Sears, tackling the tough issues of our day, fighting for the soul of America, and looking at the world with a biblical lens. Or join Brianna Megan on More Than a Song, where every lyric has a story and every song carries a message deeper than the music. Step into encouragement with Faith Danielle on Be the One, a podcast challenging you to rise up and be the difference God is calling you to be. And experience the life-changing messages from New Beginnings Live, straight from our Sunday morning services to wherever you are. This is more than media, it's a movement. Subscribe today to Anchor Point Media Network on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen, because it does matter, and it is important now. Anchor Point Media Network, where faith and leadership meet media. Hey guys, I wanted to tell you about two books that I've written that come straight from the heart. The first is Into the Deep, Pursuing Your Purpose by Pursuing Intimacy with God. It's about leaving the shallow waters of faith and diving into a life of true purpose and closeness with Him. This book has been a multi-year project. Started it about 5 years ago, worked on it from time to time, but this past summer was able to step away and really put everything together. The second book is While It Is Day, Living with the Eternal Urgency. And in it, I share the importance of living every moment like it matters for eternity, because time is short. The foundation of that book is a sermon that I had preached not that long ago from John chapter 9, verse 4. Both books are available right now on Amazon. Just search Into the Deep or While It Is Day by Tom Sears, and I believe you'll be encouraged and challenged to go deeper with God.
Spiritual battle is coming to the West, and the enemies are wokeism or Marxism combining with Islamism to go after what we call the American way of life. And the American way of life is very simple. I want to be able to get married, buy a home, have kids, allow them to ride their bike till the sun goes down, send them to a good school, have a low-crime neighborhood.
That, of course, ladies and gentlemen, was Charlie Kirk. Didn't sound like too much to ask for, right? Many of us grew up in a time where those things are exactly what we had. And we've also watched them disappear and go away. I have so much more I want to talk about on this program, but this is the one that's capped at 30 minutes. And we're not quite finished just yet, but I do want to take a moment to remind you that you need to subscribe on your whatever podcasting platform you listen to. Subscribe so that you can have the additional content that we do release when we release the sort of FM version of the What's Important Now program. And there will be an extended version to this one as well, because to be honest with you, I'm not able to get it all in. And so, because I only have just a few more minutes left, can we recover what we've lost? I've tried to ask this question in every program because it is such a great question. And it's an honest question. It's a real question. Can we recover what has been lost? The events over this last week, as it relates to the assassination of Charlie Kirk, have, the range of emotions that I went through. Because I think what happens is when you have someone like Charlie Kirk, and it doesn't matter if you're right or left, people take a snippet, a small little portion of what you're actually saying, and then that goes to social media, and people run with it. And then they develop an idea about who you are as a person without ever looking at the fact, like I said, to start the program, that he was a husband and a father and a genuinely good man who just gave people a place to talk. Of course he had an ideology. Of course he had an opinion. Of course he had viewpoints. We all do. Should we die for them? Absolutely not. So can we recover what's been lost? When we talk about civic virtue in our country and how it's on decline and how no one wants to serve anymore and no one wants to be a part of this once great nation, can we recover what's been lost? And yes, the answer is yes, but it has to be on purpose. It's not just going to happen, because civic virtue doesn't just fall from the sky. It's formed. And much like what Charlie Kirk, his message, it's formed first in the homes, it's formed then in the churches, and then it goes into the communities and it goes across the nation. And so really there's 3 lanes for us, 3 ways forward. Number 1, we can reform the citizen at home. We teach kids the duties of freedom. We tell them the truth. We keep our promises. We show up and we serve and we let them see that. We get screens out of their faces and out of the center of their lives. We make our dinner tables the classrooms for gratitude and responsibility. And we turn what did you get into what did you give. That's how we move forward. We also have to re-equip the church. Civic virtue is downstream of character, and character is downstream of worship. And so churches, we must start preaching courage again, honesty again, self-control, and neighborly love. And then we have to mobilize our members for what? Into tutoring, helping kids, into foster care support, into feeding our hungry neighbors, to mentor our youth. And yes, that will rebuild trust. And it's the one commodity that we are very short on right now, ladies and gentlemen. We also have to rebuild local belonging. Join something bigger than yourself. Volunteer squads, service clubs, school boards, veterans groups. The old America, Tocqueville admired, can once again rise from the ashes if we practice what he called the art of association, not just online, but in person. And remember this, the data shows the muscle can grow again. Volunteering has begun to rebound. According to the census, let's push it even higher. We got to teach the basics again, ladies and gentlemen. The civics slide isn't just a test score. It's a warning light. It's the check engine light on your car. Let's put the Constitution, the separation of powers, and local responsibilities back at the center of civic education. Only 22% of eighth graders are at or above proficient levels in civics. We have to fix that. You have to feed the roots of virtue. The bottom line, civic virtue can be rebuilt. I want to thank you for joining me on part 3 of Is America Dying? As we've looked at the death of civic virtue. I am out of time. I have so much more to say. Will you join me on the extended edition? I hope you will. Go to any platform, podcasting platform, to find us. By the time you hear this, if listening on FM radio, you will in fact be able to find the extended version. America doesn't have to collapse. It doesn't have to fall. I did a program one time on the cycle of civilizations. We don't have to follow that. We can be different, ladies and gentlemen. We can be different. But it has to be, as I said, it has to be on purpose. Freedom will not survive without citizens who choose duty over decadence and service over self. Again, President Kennedy, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And I'm going to finish where I started. Take time to pray for Charlie Kirk's family, his kids, his wife, his friends, those who loved him. Horrible, horrible tragedy, but he's not the only one. There are others. Let's take a step back and really try to connect with who we are. But I have to say this, we've got to reconnect with God. We got to get back to morality and virtue if we are going to have virtue in this nation. Join me on the extended version, ladies and gentlemen. There's so much more to talk about. Until next time, fight the good fight of faith. Contend for the faith. There is a cause. It does matter. And it is important now. Once again, my daughter, Brianna Megan's going to take us out of the program. Check her out on any music platform, Apple Music, Spotify, wherever. And her new single, Free, is out. I hope you enjoy it. God bless you. Take care. And we will talk soon.